Welcome to the deep dive. We take complex sources and, well, we try to boil them down to what you really need to know.
And today, it's a tough one. We're looking at a major public health crisis.
Yeah, really serious. It unfolded recently, impacting the expatriate community over in the Asia Pacific region, specifically Kuwait.
That's right. Our sources are detailing this just devastating methanol poisoning outbreak. It's led to multiple deaths and some really catastrophic permanent injuries.
So, our mission today, if you like, is threefold. First, just grasp the sheer scale of this tragedy.
Right. And second, we need to understand the sort of, well, the background, the local regulations, the social factors that kind of allowed this to happen.
And third, the really critical medical science. How does this stuff, methanol, actually, harm the body so badly?
It's terrifying when you look at the specifics.
Okay, let's unpack this then. We're talking about 13 confirmed deaths, which is already horrific.
13, yeah. But the total number of poisoning cases confirmed by the Ministry of Health, 63 people.
63. And when you look at who is affected, it's not random, is it? There's a clear demographic pattern here.
No, absolutely not random. That's a key point. The victims were mainly Asian, yes, patriot workers, construction, general labor.
Right. And that demographic, they often rely heavily on sort of community networks, right?
Yeah.
And sometimes, maybe driven by costs, they turn to informal or black markets for things.
Precisely. Economic necessity plays a huge role, and that makes them vulnerable to unregulated, dangerous products.
And, beyond the fatalities, the state of the survivors it's deeply shocking. The sources really detail permanent damage. We can't just focus on the number who died.
No, you really can't. I mean, look at the immediate medical situation. Of those hospitalized, 31 people were critically ill. They needed mechanical ventilators just to breathe.
31 on ventilators. That tells you the body was just shutting down, multiple systems failing.
Exactly. And the kidneys took a massive hit almost immediately. 51 patients, that's the vast majority of the 63 needed emergency dialysis.
Wow, 51. So this wasn't a slow decline. It was like an immediate systemic poisoning from the byproducts.
Absolutely. Rapid organ failure. And then there's the long-term cost, even for those who survived the critical phase.
Yeah.
21 patients suffered permanent or severe vision impairment.
21. So over a third of the survivors are now blind or have serious sight problems.
Permanently. It's a direct result of how methanol, or rather its byproducts, attack the optic nerve.
Unbelievable. And the symptoms they first felt, were they immediate?
Pretty rapid, yeah. The reports mention classic signs: bad headaches, intense vomiting, blurred vision kicking in.
Blurred vision leading potentially to the blindness you mentioned.
Exactly. And then seizures. In the fatal cases, it progressed quickly to coma and death.
That rapid progression, it really brings us to the source, doesn't it? Where did this stuff come from?
Well, connecting the dots, we have to look at the regulatory picture in Kuwait. The contamination was traced to locally made illicit alcoholic drinks.
Illicit, meaning illegal.
Completely illegal. Sources suggest they were likely bought around the Al Shuk Block 4 area.
And this ties into Kuwait's laws, right? Alcohol is banned there.
Yes. There's been a total ban on importing or consuming alcohol since way back in 1964.
Okay, so 1964, that's a long time. And what happens when you ban something people still want?
You get a black market. Strict prohibition doesn't just erase demand, especially, among certain groups like migrant workers. It just pushes the supply chain underground.
Underground, unregulated, and dangerous.
Completely unregulated, driven purely by profit, not safety. Quality control goes out the window.
And that's where the specific danger of this batch comes in, right? It wasn't just poorly made alcohol. It was the wrong type of alcohol.
Exactly. This is crucial. It wasn't ethanol, which is the alcohol in regular drinks. It was methanol.
Methanol, which is industrial.
Highly toxic industrial chemical. Think antifreeze, paint strippers, solvents, stuff you should never, ever drink.
So why would someone put that in a drink?
Primarily cost, yes. Methanol is way cheaper and often easier to get hold of than pure ethanol suitable for drinking. For an illegal producer, swapping it in means a much bigger profit margin.
They're basically trading safety, people's lives, for profit.
That's the grim reality of it.
So you have this vulnerable group, the migrant workers, maybe looking for cheaper options, trying to be discreet because it's illegal.
Right.
And they end up exposed to the absolute most dangerous version possible, precisely because the ban creates this risky black market dynamic.
It's a tragic convergence. The regulations, the economics, the vulnerability of the demographic. It all came together.
Which leads us straight into, well, the horrifying details of why methanol is so deadly, the medical science bit.
Yeah, let's get into that
Yeah.
because understanding this is key to understanding the severity of the injuries.
So you mentioned methanol looks, maybe smells, similar to regular alcohol, so people wouldn't know.
Correct. There's often no immediate warning sign. You wouldn't necessarily know you're drinking poison until the effects start, and by then, it's often too late.
So why is it so much worse than ethanol? What happens inside the body?
Okay, so the sources confirm this. The real danger isn't actually the methanol molecule itself initially. It's what your body does to it.
Okay.
Your liver has enzymes to break down alcohol.
Mhm.
One key enzyme is called alcohol dehydrogenase.
Right.
When that enzyme works on methanol, it converts it into other compounds. First formaldehyde, which is bad enough, but then it converts it further into formic acid.
Formic acid, like related to ants.
Exactly the same chemical, yeah.
Yeah.
And formic acid is incredibly toxic to human cells.
So what does the formic acid do once it's created?
It causes chaos. The main thing is severe metabolic acidosis. Basically, your blood becomes dangerously acidic. The pH plummets.
Acidic blood, that sounds bad.
It's catastrophic. That high acidity directly messes with how your cells produce energy, especially in vital organs like the brain, the kidneys, the heart.
So cellular energy production just fails, system-wide.
Pretty much. And that leads directly to that rapid cascading organ failure we talked about. The nervous system gets depressed, brain damage occurs.
Which explains why so many needed kidney dialysis right away. And the ventilators. Their bodies were essentially being poisoned from the inside out by this acid.
Precisely. The blood itself becomes toxic. And that blindness we mentioned.
Yeah.
The optic nerve is uniquely sensitive to formic acid. It essentially gets destroyed by it. That's why the vision loss is so common and often permanent in survivors.
It's terrifying. And the amount you need to drink, it's tiny, isn't it?
Shockingly small. The sources give specific numbers. Just 10 milliliters, that's barely 2 teaspoons, can cause permanent blindness.
2 teaspoons. It's hard to even picture. 2 teaspoons ruining someone's sight forever. It just highlights the insane risk of anything unregulated.
Absolutely. And if you consume more, say above 15 milliliters, which is still less than a standard shot, it can be fatal.
15 milliliters. And it happens fast.
Brutally fast. Symptoms usually show up within, say, 2 to 12 hours after drinking it. But the really severe stuff, the acidosis, respiratory failure, irreversible nerve damage that often develops within 12 to 48 hours.
And if people hesitate to get help, maybe because they know they were drinking something illegal?
That delay is critical. Tragically critical. Those hours are when the damage becomes irreversible.
Which makes immediate medical help absolutely vital. So how do doctors even treat this? If the formic acid is the killer, you have to stop the body making it, right?
Exactly. That's the primary goal. You need to block that enzyme, alcohol dehydrogenase, before it turns the methanol into formic acid.
How do you block an enzyme?
There are specific antidotes. Fumpisol is one. It's actually quite clever medically. Fumpisol basically jumps in and occupies the enzyme, blocking the methanol from binding to it.
Ah, okay. So it runs interference, buys the body time.
Buys critical time, yes.
Yeah.
Interestingly, another treatment is giving high doses of ethanol, regular safe alcohol.
Wait, you give alcohol to treat alcohol poisoning?
For methanol poisoning, yes, because ethanol competes for the same enzyme. If you flood the system with ethanol, it preferentially binds to the enzyme, again blocking the methanol from being metabolized into formic acid.
Wow. Okay, so the body can then filter out the unmetabolized methanol more slowly and safely.
That's the idea. But even with the antidote, you still need intensive supportive care, especially hemodialysis.
Right, the dialysis. So that's literally filtering the patient's blood outside the body,
Yeah.
like an artificial kidney.
Yes, exactly. To physically remove the methanol and, more importantly, the formic acid that's already been produced, because the patient's own kidneys are just overwhelmed by the acidity and toxins.
And the sources emphasize any delay in starting these treatments, it makes the outcome much, much worse, often guarantees permanent injury or death.
It really is a desperate race against the body's own metabolism.
Okay, so we've got the source figured out, illicit production driven by prohibition. We understand the mechanism formic acid toxicity and the dire medical emergency it creates. So let's turn to the response. How did the government, the authorities, the embassies react?
Well, it triggered a pretty major multi-agency response.
Mm-hmm.
The Ministry of Health, security forces, regulatory bodies, they all launched a big investigation.
Focused on finding the source, presumably, the producers.
Primarily, yes. Tracking down and dismantling networks, making and distributing this toxic stuff.
So, more crackdowns. Raids on illegal operations. Trying to cut off the supply.
Definitely. That's the enforcement angle, an intensification of raids and efforts to shut down these producers.
But there's another side too, right? Public health warnings.
Absolutely crucial. Authorities started issuing urgent warnings, especially aimed at the expatriate communities, hammering home the extreme danger of drinking any unregulated alcohol, anything that might contain methanol.
And what about support for the victims and their families, especially since many were foreign nationals?
The embassies of the home countries got heavily involved, liaising with Kuwaiti authorities, making sure their citizens got proper medical care, providing support, financial, logistical to families.
That's good to hear. Setting up hotlines too, I imagine, for information.
Yes, many established dedicated hotlines trying to help people navigate the crisis, get information about loved ones.
You know, what's interesting, though, or maybe worrying, is that potential conflict in the response you mentioned earlier.
Right, you have the police cracking down hard raids, arrests, treating it as a crime.
But doesn't that kind of enforcement risk pushing these operations even deeper underground? Maybe making the next batch even more dangerous because it's even less regulated.
That's the inherent tension, isn't it? The goal is obviously to stop the supply. But if the underlying demand is still there, driven by, economic pressures, social factors, maybe the ban itself,
Then the crackdowns might just shift the problem or make it harder to track rather than actually solving it.
it's a real dilemma. Public health advice is always clear. Don't drink unlicensed or homemade booze, especially where it's prohibited. Report suspicious activity.
Sure.
But we also have to recognize, for some of the most vulnerable people, reporting activity or even seeking help after consuming something illegal, that can feel incredibly risky too. Fear of deportation, arrest.
Yeah, that makes sense. So this whole tragic incident, it's just such a stark, awful example of what can happen when you have that combination, strict prohibition driving a black market.
The consequences are right there in the numbers. 13 dead,
Yeah.
21 people permanently blind.
Yeah,
It's a brutal human cost.
it really is.
And it forces you, I think, to grapple with that underlying conflict. Which brings us to a final thought, maybe something for you, the listener,
Yeah.
to chew on.
Yeah.
We've seen the horrific health risks are undeniable. Permanent injury, death from tiny amounts. Yet the demand clearly persists in these situations. So, thinking about interventions, what ultimately saves more lives? Is it ramping up police enforcement, trying to completely eradicate the supply through crackdowns? Or is it potentially looking at policies that address the reasons for the demand, the economic hardship, the social marginalization, maybe even the prohibition itself that push people towards these dangerous, unregulated sources in the first place?
A really complex question with no easy answers, just a very sobering look at the intersection of law, economics, and health. Thank you for walking us through the sources on this one.
Yeah, a difficult but necessary discussion.
Absolutely.